Okay, guys, this is going to be our last time talking about adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing decimals. Unless you ask for extra help or come to some of the tutoring, this is going to wrap it up. And it will be on our next monthly test in a couple weeks. And maybe we'll review it for a second, but this is pretty much it. So this is taking the last like 3 plus almost 4 weeks, because we did adding for a week, subtracting for a week, multiplying for a week, dividing for a week. So our homework tonight is just to review all of them together. So let's take a look. We're going to do this the same way we do everything. You're going to have to enter these in at the end. So take a look at number 1 and try to solve it. You can pause the video while you try to solve it, and then we'll do it together. So take a second and pause the video. Okay, so number 1, you have to remember when you're multiplying, gotta turn on your pencil. When you're multiplying and you have the whole number, this number is going to get bigger, right? Remember, it only gets smaller when it's a fraction. If you multiply by a fraction, that's the only time the number is going to get smaller, right? So this is not a fraction. So you're going to take the 4.56. And remember, when you see the exponent here, you're just going to move the decimal. We've done this a lot, right? Move the decimal that little number amount of times. So you're just going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. And your decimal would go here. And then zeros fill in all the loops. And be careful, it's not each one of these points, right? Because if you do each one of these points like here and here and here, you'll add too many. They got to go in the loops. I remember I made that mistake once, right? So now you have 4, 5, 6, 0, 0, 0, and you put your in there, and you get 456,000, and your answer for number 1 should be B. You have to know this and have to be able to do this easy. Now, you can do 4, 5, 6 times the 10 to the 4th power is a 1 with 4 zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4. And try to multiply that out, 4.5. And then move the decimal ones. But you guys have to you have to know the rule. You have to just move the decimal. If you're doing it by trying to do this, never going to happen. Okay, take a look at number 2. Pause the video and try to solve it. So number 2 is the exact opposite. Now we're dividing, right? Now when we divide a decimal, the number gets bigger. The only time it gets bigger. We don't have, a fraction. I'm sorry, a fraction or a decimal. But we're dividing in a whole number here, right? So you're just going to take the 87.23. And this time, since you're dividing, the number's got to get smaller because you're dividing in this whole number, right? And this number is just a 1 with 3 zeros. That's the 0. And it's basically 10 times 10 times 10, right? That's what that means. So now you're just going the opposite direction, and you should know because you're dividing, it's going to get smaller. So now you just go 3 spots, 1, 2, 3. Your decimal point goes out here, so you would have decimal point 0, 8, 7, 2, 3. And that matches this very first answer right here, right? So you have to know this part. If you don't know this part and you don't know how to just move the multiplication and division, you don't understand those rules, you've got to go back to our old notebook and find the practice for that from probably right before Christmas, like in December sometime. There was a lot of practice and a lot of videos about this. You got to know that. All right, let's move on to number 3. Read number 3, take a second, and figure it out. Okay, so number 3 confused me for a while because I wasn't really sure how to use this model, but now I understand. So you have to look at what this dark area is basically the multiplying, right? The answer is this dark area, because if you can see this area here is lighter, this area is lighter. So this part that overlaps is the answer, right? Well, remember, when you multiply 2 fractions or 2 decimals or fractions together, the number is going to get smaller, right? So don't let this one confuse you because they're going to show you this model and it's going to confuse you. But remember, even if you're confused, look at your choices. You know that it's 0.3 times 0.5. That's the same, right? Now I'm going to show you. Let me erase this. Here is the 0.5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And remember, 0.5 is 5/10, right? And each one of these going up and down is a tenth, right? I bet you can guess where the 3 is. 1, 2, 3. That's this part going this way, right? So we have that multiplied together. So now, of course, I've scribbled in here like a dodo. So when you see this model, just know that this is the 0.5 part, this is the 0.3 part, and they multiply it together. Now you could do 0.3 times 0.5, and you know you'd get 15. You move your decimal point twice, and then you know it's got to be the one that shows 1.5. Or with the model, you could just look up here and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And you have to know, because look, unfortunately, this is why this won't work for you guys, is because all the answers basically have a 15 or 1 and a 5 in it, right? So you have to know that each one of these are hundredths, right? And remember, this 5 is in the hundredths place. This 5 is in the tens place. This 5 is in the ones place. This 5 is in the thousands place. This 5 is in the hundredths place. So please don't, when you see this dumb model here, don't let this ruin you on the test, because it ruined me for a minute because I didn't really understand how it worked, but now I get it. But ultimately, if you come down here and do the math, if you do the math like we did over here, you'll get your answer. Like 0.3 times 0.5 does not equal 1.5, so that doesn't work. So even if you just say, forget it, I don't understand the model, doing the math down here, you're not going to get the right answer. So only one of these equations down here is correct. So you can use the model if you understand it, or just remember, when you see something like this, only one of them is going to be correct. That one's not right, that one's not right, and that one's not right, if you do the math. So model math, and Mr. Speen and I, we don't care what you do. Whatever way you understand it best, but don't let that model ruin it for you, because I kind of did let the model ruin me for a little while. Okay. Pause me and do number 4. Okay, so this is a multi-step problem, and this is obviously, there's 2 steps in this, right? Because we want to know how much change she's going to get back. We know she had $30. We know she spent $8.75 and $15.95. So you've got to take $15.95 plus the $8.75. And the key in this is lining up all this right, keeping your decimals in line, right? And then don't make silly mistakes adding. So 10, 2, 2, 17, 13, 14. So I got that she spent $24.70. I'm doing this for the first time. OMG, I hope I get this right. So then I know she spent $24.70. Well, she paid with $30. 0, 10 minus 7 is 30 cents. $5.30 is what I got. Let me make sure I'm right before. Oh yeah, $5.30 is it. Now look at these choices. They're all very close, right? And a lot of times I tell you to do your estimate to try to get the right answer. This one's really tough because it's very, very close. But you guys might not have to write all this out this way, because, you know, if you add 30 cents to $24.70, you get to $25, right? And then 30 minus 25 is $5. So you could maybe do the second step in your head. If you just add 30 cents to this right here, that would get you to 25, but you don't have to. So a multi-step problem, make sure you do that right. Okay, take a second, do number 5. Okay, now 5 needs you to find out, once again, how much money does Cece spend at the supermarket? Well, she spends $6.69 on 4 bags of flour, and she spends $3.55 on 3 bags of chocolate chips. So once again, multi-step problem. Now, you know how I love to tell you guys to eliminate choices that don't make sense? They grouped all of these pretty darn close together, right? But what you guys should be thinking is, man, my answer better be between $36 and $37, right? Or 30, what is it? 36 to $38, somewhere in that range, right? So you just have to do the math here. There's no real trick. And once again, multiple steps, right? 9 times 4 is 36. 24, 26, 27, carry the 2, 24, 25, 27. So $26.67, 26.76. And that is for her to buy flour. So now we're going to do the chocolate chips. 15, 16, 9, $10.65. I hope I get this right, because if I miss it on the video, it's certainly embarrassing. So now I've got to add these together. So a lot of steps and a lot of keeping the decimal in the right place, right? A lot. I know I'm going kind of quick. I hope you guys are seeing these decimals. If you're not sure how I'm keeping the decimal, where I'm keeping it, you really got to let us know, because that was a long time ago in this class, right? Okay. 6 plus 5 is 11. Carry the 1. 14. Carry the 1. 7, 3. Drop the decimal straight down. I think she spent $37.41. Let me check my answer key to make sure I'm not making a C. Yep, C. So your answer would be C. So organization is very important on this, right? On your next monthly test, having your piece of paper where you can keep this lined out, labeling it so you know what you're talking about, keeping it organized so that you don't make a silly mistake. Because here's the nutty part. If you do 9 times 4 right here and get 35 instead of 36, you're going to be messed up. You're not going to find the answer. You make one silly mistake somewhere and you're not going to find the answer. Now, here's the good thing is, if you make a mistake with the math, a lot of times the answer might not show up over here if you make like a weird mistake. But they do create these answers on the test for common mistakes. And I'm sure we could figure them out if we wanted to, but we don't have time for that. Okay, let's look at number 6. Pause the video. Okay, so number 6 is one that you have to think about, right? So Kelly's hometown has 40,000 people. The population of Tommy's hometown is 2/10 of the population of Kelly's town. So you have to know, we want to know what is the population of Tommy's hometown. Which of these equations will solve it for us? So I'm not going to lie to you. I get this twisted a lot in my head. So I have to slow down and think about what I'm doing here. So I need to basically divide this 2/10 into the 40,000, right? So A is saying that I take the amount of people and divide the 40,000 into the people in Tommy's town. Does it make sense that I would take Kelly's 40,000 people and try to jam them into Tommy's small town? That problem's backwards, right? So I can eliminate A. Now, B says that I'm going to take the 40,000, and this is where I have to, you guys have to remember, you have to remember the rule, right? Remember, all of these that are left right here are decimals or fractions that are less than 1. So when it's less than 1, if you want, does everybody agree there's 40,000 people in the town and only 2/10 of them, which is less than 1, are in Tommy's town? So the number has to get much smaller, right? Does everybody agree? There are not more than 40,000 people in Tommy's hometown. There are 40,000 in Kelly's hometown. Tommy's hometown only has 2/10 of the amount of people. So if we broke up Kelly's 40,000 people into 10 groups. Only 2 of those groups are, so the number's going to be way smaller, right? And you almost always want to think, ooh, I got to divide. But if you see a decimal or a fraction here, dividing is going to make the number bigger, right? So that eliminates B as a choice. And tons of you guys are going to pick B. And you have to remember that when it's a decimal or a fraction that's less than 1, you have to multiply into that whole number, right? So now that we've eliminated those, and those are tough ones to eliminate. I'm not saying those are easy for you guys to eliminate. They're hard for me to eliminate. Like getting A to go away, thinking about it backwards, because you're taking the 40,000 of hers in, right? That was hard. Getting rid of B was hard. But now you're down to 2 choices. Well, only one of these choices that's left is equal to 2/10. So you just go back to your chart and figure out decimal, tenths, hundredths. We need 2/10. So the answer, it would be 0.2, right? So the answer would be D. That one is very tough. And I hope that me explaining it and thinking it through helped you guys. But just remember, you've got to, when it gives you one of these ones that says which equation is needed, you got to look at each one, and they're all going to seem like you want to pick them. But you've got to think of the rules and the things that we've talked about and eliminate them, because I wanted to pick A at the beginning of this. But you got to remember the way this is set up, you taking the 0.2, the 2/10, and you're dividing that 40,000 into it. Well, that's not going to give you that. You can't take Kelly's hometown and divide it in. All right, let's go with number 7. Okay, now on the same token, here's number 7. This is where I need you guys to pay attention, because now we have 0.8, right? 0.8 of a cake left over. She wants to share it with her friends, and she splits the cake into 2/10 size pieces, right? So now you've got to take how many pieces, and because they're both fractions, now they're both fractions. You don't multiply anymore. You divide when they're both fractions. So that immediately takes B out of the equation, right? The answer can't be B. So now you have to get them to go in the pieces. We have our whole, which is the 0.8, and we've got to take the 0.2 pieces into it. So you have to divide the 2 into it. And that is going to give us 4, right? And remember, I went ahead. We've got to make this number out here you're dividing, make it a whole number. So you've got to take this and move it here, and take this and move it here. So it's really just 2 into 8 is 4, and your answer is A. Now, B is written backwards, right? Because you don't take the pieces and try to divide the whole cake into one little piece, right? Because it doesn't make sense. You can't take the 0.2, one of the pieces, one of the little pieces, and divide the whole cake into it. You got to take the whole cake and divide the pieces into it to see how many pieces there are, right? And then D gives you 0.4 as the answer, so that one would not. Gives you, oh, see, D, see, I almost did D. Sorry, it took me a second. D is if you don't do this step of moving the decimals that I almost forgot to show you again, you would maybe get this answer, right? Because wasn't that, if I didn't move the decimals, I would have moved this right up and got the wrong answer. Ooh, so some of these are tricky, and this is what we need to make sure. If you have any questions about these, we need to talk about these, okay? And then let's look at number 8. Take your time and do number 8. Now, I just said this, right? Which statement is true about the product? That's the answer when you multiply, right? The answer when you multiply of a decimal times a decimal. So when you have a decimal and you multiply it, We already said this. If it's less than 1, it's going to get smaller. If it's a decimal that's less than 1 into a whole big number like 4 or 400, it's going to get smaller. And the same thing is true if it's a decimal times a decimal. It's always going to get smaller. So number 8, the answer is C, because both of these numbers are going to get smaller. See, it's not going to be greater than 1 because you'd have to multiply by at least 1, or, well, that actually is not true. Now, you can, to get this one right, multiply this out if you have to see which one of those makes sense. But if you just know the rule, anytime it's going to be less, right? This one says greater. It doesn't make sense. The answer wouldn't be in between the two. It's always got to be less when you multiply by it. If you're multiplying by a decimal or fraction that's less than 1, it's always going to get smaller. So make sure for number 8 you do C. All right, guys, let us know if you have any questions or problems with that. That is going to be about 35 to 40% of our next monthly test is going to be on this. And then we're going to cover older stuff also. So let us know if you have questions. Review this a couple times. You can do this over a couple times and start to see the patterns, and it will help you. All right, have a good rest of your day.